Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Earlier today, our medical experts announced a plan for booster shots to every fully vaccinated American, adult American. You know, this will boost your immune response. It will increase your protection from COVID-19. And it's the best way to protect ourselves from new variants that could arise.
President Biden making news on the fight against COVID-19. Booster shots are on the way. Nursing home workers will be required to get vaccinated, and the Department of Education is working to take action against governors who are putting up roadblocks for schools. Good evening. It's Wednesday, August 18th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. President Biden made those comments at the White House this afternoon. The big headline is that booster shots will be available in the fall. More on that in a moment, but first, the latest numbers here in San Diego that should have your attention. The latest daily reporting shows more than 1,700 new infections. That's the highest one-day total since January, according to San Diego County. 1 point of optimism is 0 new deaths in San Diego. That's an indication that vaccines allow for a better recovery. President Biden is urging vaccinated Americans to get their booster when the time comes. Melissa May looks at the timelines and benefits of a new round of vaccines.
A recent study from Israel suggests that COVID-19 vaccine protection could decrease after 6 months.
There's uncertainty, and so I think the government's taking a better safe than sorry approach.
Dr. Shane Crotty is a professor at the La Jolla Institute of Immunology and says the Delta variant means COVID-19 boosters are necessary.
Delta is a lot tougher to stop. It's sort of almost a different virus in the way we have to think about it, because it is just dramatically more transmissible. And so the more transmissible a virus is, the harder it is for your immune system to stop.
The boosters contain the same medicine as the original Moderna and Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines. Results of the booster clinical trials are positive. Crotty says the booster vaccine would only extend a person's immunity.
Immune memory that was good for several years after that. And it wouldn't be unreasonable for it to be good for 10 years, just like a tetanus vaccine or a hepatitis B vaccine.
I wanted to get it because it's added more protection on my side.
Bianca Santos is a Kearny Mesa resident who is immunocompromised because of a kidney transplant she had back in 2017. Her doctor recommended she get the booster.
I actually saw him virtually this past Monday, and he said I should just go for it. It's a really easy process. I just need to go to CVS. I don't need prescription for it, just to let them know that I'm immunocompromised.
Those who are immunocompromised currently can get the boosters at both CVS and Walgreens. The CDC has not released an official booster recommendation for people who received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Melissa May, KPBS News.
Mexico has issued emergency use authorization for Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine. It's the 8th vaccine approved for use in Mexico. The country's Undersecretary of Health says nearly 79 million COVID-19 vaccine doses have been administered so far. It was back to school for many local districts this morning, among them Poway Unified, the third largest in the county. Some 36,000 kids joined back together with teachers and staffs. Campuses held special welcome back events as many students returned for the first time after staying home due to the pandemic. Superintendent Marianne Kim Phelps says a lot of work went into making campuses safe and that state mask mandates are in effect. It's also a big day on the campus of San Diego State University. Thousands of students are moving into the residence halls. For some, it's a long time coming. We talked to Sydney Sambueno, now in her third year at SDSU. Her entire college experience so far has been defined by the pandemic.
I'm from Hawaii, so for my sophomore year, or my freshman year, I had to go back during March, and then I stayed all online, and now I'm back. I'm just excited to get back into the groove of everything, actually go in person, meet new people, and really experience the college life.
SDSU is requiring all students, staff, and faculty to be vaccinated for COVID-19. The fall semester begins on Monday. The CDC reports more than 120,000 kids tested positive for COVID-19 last week. That's 14 times what we were seeing in June. And yet school districts across the country are facing threats from their own governors. Amara Walker has more on the disconnect.
It's the first day of school here in Broward County, Florida, and students will be required to wear masks. The decision defying the governor's order and facing possible punishment from the Florida Department of Education.
We have districts who are picking and choosing what laws they want to follow.
A move school officials say is worth the risk.
We're also very concerned about the number of cases that are happening here within Broward. As of this morning, we only have five ICU pediatric beds available. That's it.
At least 4,700 Florida students and staff tested positive for the coronavirus in the 15 largest school districts already in session, and at least another 14,200 others are in quarantine or isolation due to the virus.
We're flying with reckless captains. We have governors who have actually issued mandates that school districts are prohibited from issuing mask mandates. We are really in a terrible situation because we don't have the appropriate response.
And the battle over wearing masks in schools isn't just in Florida. Arizona's governor is threatening to withhold funding increases for schools requiring facial coverings. It's the same in Texas, where the school mask mandate is being fought in court and where Governor Greg Abbott announced he's tested positive for COVID-19.
I have received the COVID-19 vaccine, and that may be one reason why I'm really not feeling any symptoms right now.
There's only around 300 intensive care unit beds available in all of Texas. And in Alabama, there's none available within the entire state.
We've never been here before. We are truly now in uncharted territory in terms of our ICU bed capacity. Fortunately, we still do not have an issue with ventilators.
New coronavirus infections are on the rise in at least 37 states. With the surge, masks will be necessary at outdoor concerts and sporting events, with more than 10,000 people in Los Angeles County starting tomorrow. The TSA is also extending its federal mandate requiring masks on planes, trains, and buses through January.
For the masks, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Right now, we're at a screaming level of virus transmission in the United States. We're pushing up to 150,000 new cases a day.
That was Amara Walker reporting. STEM education is a big part of the COVID-19 story and how we learn about this pandemic. Coming up, we'll show you the work in robotics happening at UC San Diego that might help the campus contain the virus as students return. Friendship Park celebrates 50 years of friendship between the people of Mexico and the United States. KPBS reporter Alexandra Rangel has more on the park's anniversary.
The County Board of Supervisors just declared today International Friendship Park Day in the County of San Diego.
50 years ago today, the First Lady, Pat Nixon, visited the westernmost end of the U.S.-Mexico border, where San Diego meets Tijuana. She inaugurated the surrounding area as Borderfield State Park.
And on that occasion, she asked her security detail to remove the barbed wire that then marked the border, and she walked into Mexico to greet the crowd that had assembled on the southern side.
John Fanistil is the executive director of VIA International. He says the park has long served as a meeting place where people can hug their loved ones through the border fence. But in recent years, Border Patrol restrictions have increased.
It's not an inviting place on the U.S. side at all. That needs to change.
People aren't able to gather like they used to.
8 weeks ago, I met a guy who'd gone out to meet his newborn child. So he had to talk on the phone and wave from 120 feet away to his partner and new son.
Local advocates are hoping to restore Friendship Park back to its true purpose. They also have a vision to eventually create an open, binational park.
We have envisioned an 80-acre binational park, 40 acres on each side of the border.
Jim Brown with Public Architecture says a similar park already exists on the Canadian border.
We believe it's time to send a message to our citizens and to our governments, and this would be a wonderful thing to have instead of the really destructive militarized situation that is on the border currently.
Alexandra Rangel, KPBS News.
A fire burning between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe has now destroyed dozens of homes. People who live near the small town of Grizzly Flats have evacuated. It is dry and windy to our north, and that's making it harder to make progress on the fire. A local reporter talked to a woman who wanted to do her part to help her neighbors.
Well, because I wanted to give pet food for people who had to leave in a hurry, and so I got that, and then some cat litter and just stuff like that.
Why were you motivated to do that?
Well, because you never know when it's going to be your turn. Yeah, so just wanted to help.
Wanted to pay it forward.
Yeah.
Getting a little emotional, why?
Yeah, it's just it's sad what's happening.
The European Union shared this photo of the Caldor fire as seen from space. It was taken by the Copernicus satellite. Cal Fire says it's now at 53,000 acres since it started on Saturday. Leaving Afghanistan and how that affects California's large military population is likely to come up in tomorrow night's recall debate. The situation tonight remains tense, with U.S. military trying to evacuate workers and allies. Karen Kaifa has this update from Washington.
The Department of Defense says U.S. military...
And I know those who fought alongside me. And as I said, we have a moral obligation to help those who helped us. And I feel the urgency deeply.
The airport secured by about 4,500 U.S. troops, but elsewhere in Afghanistan, clashes between protesters and the Taliban, who the U.S. says have agreed to provide safe passage to the airport for civilian evacuations, an uncertain proposition.
We went into Afghanistan 20 years ago because the Taliban harbored the terrorists that attacked us on 9/11. And now we're relying on that same Taliban to keep Americans safe.
The evacuation priority is U.S. citizens first, then Afghans with visas, then those with applications for special immigrant visas, Afghans who helped the U.S. efforts over the last 2 decades. There is deep concern the Biden administration isn't moving quickly enough.
No one is arguing about doing security checks. Of course we need that, but get them to a safe place.
Meanwhile, after fleeing the country as the Taliban took over Kabul Sunday, the former president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, is in the United Arab Emirates. The Emirati government said Wednesday his whereabouts had been unconfirmed for days. In Washington, I'm Karen Kaifa.
And as the war in Afghanistan comes to an end, combat veterans and the people who serve them look back at 20 years of advancements. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh talked to people who run the prosthetics lab at the Balboa Naval Medical Center.
The prosthetics lab at the Naval Hospital in San Diego is quieter than when it first opened 15 years ago during the height of the 2 wars. Nathaniel Leoncio runs this center. He was also one of its first patients. He lost his leg in Ramadi when a roadside bomb exploded under his Humvee.
Went off right about the motor on the driver's side and made the Humvee do a backflip. And I got partially ejected and the door or part of the Humvee kind of landed on my leg.
He woke up at Walter Reed Medical Center and eventually transferred to his hometown, San Diego. The Pentagon estimates 1,500 troops lost at least one limb in Iraq and Afghanistan. Each one of them has had to adapt.
Some people really thrive, and some people go back to school, go back to work. Some people haven't done so well.
Suicide has been an issue among veterans in general, including patients who have come through this clinic, he says.
What we found over the years is especially getting guys up on their feet as soon as possible. And I remember when I got my first leg, it's a big thing. It's a big boost mentally.
There have been advances in materials, lightweight carbon fiber and more durable joints, but a lot of what makes these prosthetics so useful is the art of molding each device to its user, which is still largely done by hand.
And so that's why sometimes I can tell whose leg they are.
The number of new combat injuries had fallen to almost zero even before the war in Afghanistan ended. Over time, limbs change. Some of the clients are combat vets who need new prosthetics or to refit old ones. But most new clients are training accidents or people who are injured off duty.
As soon as the ambulance showed up, I gave them the rundown of what happened and what I found in my findings. They were actually pretty impressed.
Hospital corpsman Michael Diaz lost his leg in a motorcycle accident 2 years ago.
You know, there is some adapting that, you know, I've had to go through. And, you know, I'm still adapting. I can run, I can lift, I can row. I'm playing wheelchair rugby and wheelchair basketball right now.
Diaz is about to medically retire from the Navy. He wants to retrofit motorcycles to enhance the quality of life of other amputees. Part of a legacy that started on a battlefield decades earlier. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
The largest solar power generating facility in San Diego County is on its way to being built right next to the small East County town of Jacumba Hot Springs. John Carroll tells us the approval of the project came against the overwhelming opposition of Jacumba residents.
Jacumba Hot Springs. In case you're not quite sure where it is, here's a map. It's a hamlet of about 500 people in far eastern San Diego County, right next to the border with Mexico. And this is what it looked like in today's Board of Supervisors meeting. Scores of Jacumba residents showing up, most clad in yellow T-shirts, making clear their opposition to the proposed project. One thing everybody here agrees on is the need to move away from power generated by burning fossil fuels. And when you look at what the developers of the JVR Energy Park are proposing, it sounds like it fits in beautifully with that goal, offsetting more than 500,000 tons of CO2 emissions, producing enough power for 52,000 homes in the metro San Diego area, and preserving 435 acres of open space.
This is the right place for the project. You're going to hear a lot today about how renewable energy adjacent to the town will somehow ruin Jacumba. We have to allow changes that will save our planet. That opportunity is right here, right now. Please support the project.
But talk to most of the people in Jacumba and you get a very different perspective.
Please help us save Jacumba Hot Springs from a huge solar project that jeopardizes the future of our town.
A town that since 2020 has been largely owned by this man, Jeffrey Osborne, and a couple of business partners. Osborne used a map to show the current town in green, and then what the footprint of the solar farm would look like.
This is the size of San Diego International Airport. It is right next to our community. It is inside our protected village boundary. It's on top of a specific plan area designed for residential and commercial development only.
After listening to dozens of speakers, the board turned to discussion. Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer said she was all in favor of renewable energy, but the proposal didn't seem equitable to the residents of Jacumba. Supervisor Joel Anderson echoed those comments, which led to some spontaneous deal-making. During the meeting, the developer agreed to extend the buffer zone of the project from 300 to 400 feet away from the town's edge. And in a dramatic move, the CEO of the company behind the project upped the financial commitment to pay for community benefits to Jacumba. It had been $1.6 million, but rose to $4 million. Here's the exchange between Supervisor Lawson-Remer, Chairman Nathan Fletcher, and CEO Fred Robinson.
I had the number 5 in my head. He said 3, so I think if it was 4, I'd be like, okay,
I'm
let's
the CEO.
go. You know, I'm trying to get
CEO
there.
of the company. Okay, done. 4? Yep, we'll commit to 4. Okay, so we're good.
We're good.
Okay.
But Jeffrey Osborne says he's hired a lawyer. He didn't say whether a lawsuit would be coming. John Carroll, KPBS News.
It's a bit cooler today in San Diego, but still a little bit humid. But meteorologist Jessica Pash explains how that's going to change soon.
We're going to watch as the much drier air begins to push south and kind of squash any moisture we've had here in recent days. Temperatures are going to stay cooler here for the next several days too, but There is another warm up as we head into the start of the next work week. So as we move into tonight, temperatures are going to fall back down into the mid-60s in Escondido. A little bit of moisture again still lingering for tonight, but after that, things are really going to get much drier as we look ahead to your Thursday. 69 over in Borrego Springs, Chula Vista getting down to 69 too. Over in San Diego, 70 degrees for your overnight low. That marine layer is certainly thickening up here through the overnight period. You're going to wake up to some early morning fog and cloud cover, especially for the coastal regions, but all that should clear up as we move into the afternoon hours with a little bit more in the way of sunshine. Again, that trough that we were just talking about the other day, here it is right now. It's going to push further and further east, and behind it you get that dry air that begins to push on in. Temperatures are going to be back up into the upper 70s in Oceanside, 76 in San Diego, El Cajon getting up to 81, Borrego Springs still staying shy of the triple-digit heat by just a degree there, but don't worry, you're going to return to those triple digits by the time we get to next week. Finishing off the work week with a nice and dry note here. We're going to be drying out in the Four Corners region and across much of California down into Arizona. It's going to be dry, but again, the heat is not going to be so intense here. It's going to stay still cool, at least through the weekend, but heading into next week is when all that heat is going to return. Near the coast, temperatures generally sitting in the mid to upper 70s. Not a whole lot of change here. We're going to get a little bit more in the way of sunshine, though, as we head into next week. Further inland, temperatures go from the upper 70s Friday and Saturday, slowly warming back up into the low 80s as we head into next week. In the mountains, quite a big jump here from the 60s through the weekend into the 80s as we head into next Monday. And in the deserts, you'll also notice a little bit of a change from the 90s over the next 4 days back up into the triple digits by next Monday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the latest on the fall of Afghanistan. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The UCSD campus will be full of students for the first time in more than a year. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says school officials hope a unique robot tool that taps into the school's sewage system will help contain COVID outbreaks.
The robots are about the size of an upside-down 10-gallon bucket. Think of a small R2-D2 unit without wheels. Take off the first lid, and there's a simple computer that can schedule samples throughout the day. The half-inch rubber tube on the side of the device runs into the manhole cover, then directly into a sewer line. Take the second lid off, and you see a plastic water bottle where the samples are collected. Postdoctoral researcher Smriti Karthikeyan says there are more than 120 of these robots quietly doing the dirty work in the battle against the pandemic on the UCSD campus.
So it keeps taking these samples over a 24-hour period. So when we pick up the sample the next day, it's a representative of the entire day and not just the moment we're grabbing samples.
Samples are brought to the Biological Services building every day.
I am scanning in the bottles after they've been collected by their QR codes, and those automatically come up on our Google Docs.
Lab technician Caitlin Tribblehorn identifies where the samples come from and then prepares the contents for processing. The sewage water in the bottle is concentrated and prepared for analysis. The system has evolved since it was first deployed last summer, and that's important because pretty soon the campus will be crowded. This testing system is expected to be an important tool in the battle against COVID.
It will be, because every day we're making developments on increasing the number of samples, and we are focusing on that every time we discuss ways to make it better.
Sample collection and testing is only the beginning. Results are put into the UC San Diego COVID-19 daily dashboard. The pandemic's impact is tracked there, including how many people on campus have had infections in the past week, and the sewage testing data is shared there as well.
We have an interactive map with all these buildings, which get updated every day. So if you see a blue, it means that building did not have a wastewater positive signal. If it was red, it means that we did see a positive signal from wastewater that day.
The building occupants are typically notified and encouraged to get tested if a sample tests positive for the virus. And because the data is uploaded once a day, the history for more than 350 buildings can be tracked.
So we can see if it was one infected individual in the building infecting the other people, or they all picked up their infection somewhere else and brought it back to campus.
Rob Knight is the director of the Center for Microbiome Innovation at Ucsd. He helped set up the system because he and other researchers realized early on that COVID-19 was being transmitted before people showed outward symptoms.
We think of COVID as infecting our lungs and our airways, but it also infects our gut. And for many people, it infects the gut before it infects the respiratory system. So you can be pooping COVID into the sewage long before you show up at a hospital with respiratory symptoms.
Early testing last summer led to the discovery of infections on campus in people that didn't realize they had the disease. Because of the way the UCSD sewer system works, positive samples can be linked to specific buildings. An early warning provided by the sewage test can be invaluable when the full campus population returns for the first time in more than a year.
Even if you're vaccinated, you can still get infected and you can still infect other people. And so keeping our astonishing success record with cases low on campus is going to require continuing to be extremely vigilant.
A recent study by Karthikeyan and Knight found that 85% of COVID-19 cases on campus were detected early by the sewage testing system. That makes it a crucial tool to control outbreaks once the students return to campus next month. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a good evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.